Now stop and let me tell you about a chapter 1. God's own work had just begun. Oh, stop and let me tell you about a chapter 2. My God, He loves me and you. Well, stop and let me tell you about chapter 3. He died up there on Calvary. My God is a rock in a weary land, in a weary land, in a weary land. My God is a rock in a weary land, shelter in the time of storm. Well, stop and let me tell you about chapter 4. My God, He went and visited the poor. Oh, stop and let me tell you about chapter 5. He brought the dead back to life. Stop and let me tell you about chapter 6. Oh, it'd be good if I knew the words, wouldn't it? Oh, stop and let me tell you about a chapter 6. Because He went to Jerusalem and healed the sick.
Yeah,
my God,
yes,
in a weary land, in a weary land. My God is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in the time of storm. Well, stop and let me tell you about chapter 7. He died and He rose and He went to heaven. Stop and let me tell you about chapter 8. I can see Him standing at the golden gate. Stop and let me tell you about chapter 9. He turned that water into wine. Well, stop and let me tell you about a chapter 10. He's coming back down to His people again. My God is a rock in a weary land, in a weary land, in a weary land. My God is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in a time of storm. Sing that all again. My rock is a rock in a weary land, in a weary land. I know. My God is a rock in a weary land, and sheltered me in the time of storm.
Ooh. Wow, wow. Thank you.
so much.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have to put that back.
All right, I will.
So I'd like to introduce my great colleague, Gail Ronsky, who's a fantastic poet, who's going to just read the blurbs on the book of Annahita's book that were published today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Sister Gail, Sister Gail.
Yeah. It is such an honor to be here. I am so thrilled to have been a small part of the discovery of this amazing poet. And I want to just thank Teresia de Vroom for having the foresight to ask Annahita for some work, and then the fortitude and the power and ability to publish such a beautiful book that my only regret is that I teach a class in poetry of witness, and I so would have used this book. If I ever teach it again, it's going to be on the syllabus. I'll read the blurbs. First is from Sholeh Wolpe, who is probably LA's most well-known Iranian-American poet and a wonderful poet. She says, "Now more than ever, we need poetry, especially by Iranian women. Annahita Mahdavi West is deeply connected with her homeland, and her heartfelt poems soar the winds of freedom while yearning for the scent of Caspian." And here's my blurb. The poems in Annahita Mahdavi West's debut collection burst forth on the page, telling us in language that is as powerful as it is beautiful about the life of an Iranian woman living in exile. She tells us that the dew never washed death away from her homeland. She writes of the strings of my sister's hair flying on the trees, and of wounded wombs giving birth to mighty daughters. I love that line. Wounded wombs giving birth to mighty daughters. Yes.
Isn't that the truth?
These poems bear witness to the lives of Iranian women at a time when that witness is sorely needed. Let her poetry turn this season of endings into a season of renewed awareness and hope. And now for the big shots. This is from Angela Davis. I don't know another poet who has a blurb from Angela Davis. And a beautiful blurb. The beautiful healing words of Annahita Mahdavi West, poet of the Iranian diaspora, allow us to glimpse hope and justice even when the realities of our world only seem to offer pain and despair. This inspiring collection of poems creates bridges out of borders and lets us know what it might feel like to be citizens of the world. Henry Louis Gates Jr., also not known for blurbing books of poetry.
That's true.
Annahita Mahdavi West has penned a beautifully crafted collection of poems, suffused with the sorrow of the author in exile and rendered in a language that is irresistibly haunting. Mourning Iran's land of cypress trees, torn apart in the days of hate, Annahita Mahdavi West poignantly celebrates the enduring strength of the women who sing crimson songs of courage infinite. Dusty Relics is a deeply compelling work from an enormously talented major American poet. Yes, yes.
Wow.
And finally, from Woleshenka.
Ooh, so Yanka himself.
Yeah, the man himself. When we encounter the defiant yet tender lines of such a poet, we know that the flower that was Persia will bloom again. Gorgeous.
Cute.
And I think in the end, you know, not to interrupt, but, you know, what we do is make art and write and make beauty, and that's what will save the world, as Dorothy Day said. And it's so important. And I want to acknowledge Will Pupa, who did the amazing cover for this book. And it was and it's not the easiest thing to make a cover to illustrate someone's book that really understands what is in the poetry and what is in the work. And he did an amazing job in one weekend. And so now I will not say more about Professor Cornel West because everyone knows who he is. And if they don't, too bad.
You said he changed America.
He's going to introduce his wonderful wife, and then she's going to read.
No, indeed, indeed. Well, one, I want to say that I think we all know that we are so deeply blessed to be here. Not only because we're still here and actually being seen rather than viewed, but most importantly, we're here to hear the poetry of Annahita Mahdavi West. And it would not exist in book form without the vision and the courage of our distinguished professor, Annahita Mahdavi. Give it up. Her work, her sacrifice, her consistency has really been just beyond amazing. There's no doubt about that. And similarly so for our dear brother, Will Papa. I mean, good God Almighty, it's hard to find anybody who could provide this kind of magnificent art, not just in a short amount of time, but based on the close reading of the beautiful and magnificent poetry of my beloved wife. So let's give it up again for Brother Will. Oh, yes. Very much so, indeed, indeed. And I won't go into all of the various persons who I would want to recognize. There's so many friends and so many family here. I think we should acknowledge the beloved daughter, our daughter, Nirvana, PhD candidate, University of Santa Barbara in English.
Yes.
Whoa.
And it's dedicated for Nirvana. The text itself, whose existence is my all-time poet. That's the connection, poem. That's the connection between mother and daughter, which is beyond language, which is ineffable, really. And I see Kim and Kashara and so many others. I won't mention all the names. I won't even begin to. But I will be. I want to introduce my beloved wife, my amazing wife, poet, professor, scholar, freedom fighter. And I'm going to do something I haven't done in over 45 years, which is I'm going to read from a text. Every presentation I've ever given has always been oral.
Is that right?
It's always been spontaneous and extemporaneous. But I'm going to read my foreword. Every word, every period, every comma for Annahita, Professor Mahdavi West. Foreword. Artists are the vanguard of our species. They authorize an alternative world through human imagination, empathy, and courage. They invite us to truthful and painful journeys from and through our traumas to intense dramas of resilience and resistance. All true poets wrestle with the wounds, scars, and bruises of death, dread, disappointment, and despair alongside a mysterious joy in language and life. Annahita Mahdavi West.
Oh.
Yes, indeed. We were married in a Baptist church. She is a true poet. For over 40 years, she has suffered, shuddered, and struggled with the diaspora trauma of being a refugee, wife, mother, professor in exile from her beloved Iran. Her magnificent mother, Marzaman. And oh, I don't have a language to describe the majesty and nobility of Annahita's mother, who lives in Sweden, of all places. She lightens that place up in a magnificent way. And her father, Mahdi, both of them poets, as well as her brilliant daughter, Nirvana, PhD student in English, for whom we don't have a language. Brother Alec knows what I'm talking about. They have been the wind at Annahita's back. Persians are a world historical people with a long and glorious heritage, but also a sad and treacherous history. The U.S. and U.K. supported coup on August 19, 1953 that overthrew the Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, crushed a genuine democratic possibility that has led the shattered country down a bloody authoritarian road. The present Islamic Republic, with its fascist police and policies, may be on the brink of collapse. The heroic struggles of the woman-led movement for life, woman, and liberty flourishes against overwhelming odds. A new world could be in the making. True poets are militants for tenderness, extremists for sweetness, radicals for gentleness, love warriors for freedom. This is what you find in these powerful and truthful, these magnificent and marvelous poems of my beloved, amazing wife, a soulful voice rooted in the great tradition of Rumi and Heifetz, of Nima, Yushi and Farooq Farazad, of Akman Shamlu and Mehdi Mahdavi, one of the great revolutionary poets of his generation, her never to be forgotten father. I present to some and introduce to others the one and only my magnificent wife, Annahita Mahdavi West, professor, poet, mother, cousin, friend, and wife.
Thank you, honey.
Love
First of all, thank you everybody for being here. You can see I already used my book as a fan. I would like, before I start saying anything, to acknowledge that this is the second year passing anniversary of my beloved mother-in-law. She passed away in April 21, and I would like to take a moment of silence in her honor. I know she's here, and I would like to honor her memory.
Irene, be with. Lord have mercy.
Thank you. So as Cornel was saying, my support has always been the family unit. My parents, my sisters, brother, this unit of family in a country that you wake up in the morning and overnight everything has changed and you have no resources to deal with what's happening. So family is a part of that support, but then there is society, and as a person that is going through the stages of human development, individuation, differentiation, you don't see any resources, and it's so dark and it's so hopeless. And for me, the resources was writing, creating poetry and stories and just writing. But I never thought that I would publish them, ever, because they are very intimate for me. And also, everybody is a poet in Iranian culture. So I was thinking, why do I have to publish them? Everybody is a poet. My mom, my dad, sisters, brother, my daughter, everybody that I know. So back in was it October? Your event with back in October, we were here for an event with my husband and Professor Gates, and my dear wonderful friend read a poem. Do you remember what it was?
Clifton.
Yes.
It was a Lucille Clifton.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
So then we came back to the green room, and Gail was, I told Gail how much I loved it and how much I was influenced by this type of poetry. We had a conversation, and she gave me that piece. She said, here, I want you to have it, the one that she read. And then my husband and Theresia were also in the conversation, and my husband turns to Theresia and says, by the way, my wife writes poetry. And Theresia said, send some to me. And so the next couple of days, I sent some to her, and now I have a book. So it's very surreal. I am very humbled for the support that I received. I have to tell everybody it's a bit a nervous situation to have it being published and have it for people to read it because they're very intimate and they're very attached to my history. But I thank all of you for being here, for your support. I know it's Friday night traffic, and I really appreciate you being here, and you all honor me by being here. Thank you so much. So what should I do now?
Now you should
Read? Okay. Okay. I will read some poems. I hope I can read my own poems. So many of the pieces here were written in Farsi, and I translated them to English. And many of them were just strictly English. Language is a very interesting thing. I could only write in Farsi all my life, and then around 1993, 94, I found myself writing in English. But I have to tell you, I still, even when I'm writing in English, and there's a word in my head, it comes to me as Farsi. It's a really interesting thing. But so this, and the English versions of many of my Farsi pieces are shorter, because I felt like that's how it makes sense from that long version. So this is called Words. My words are painted with the crimson wild tulips. My words from a dry, dusty desert. I speak of thirst, of the river running through the mirage, the fish covered in red scales at the deep bottom of the sea. Hear me. I speak of the snow that blankets the mountaintops, of thousands of years of yearning to fly. Hear my words. No volume, no space, floating in the eternity, words of nothing, words of all things, like the red tulips, the color of blood, like the red scale fish, the color of heart, like the sun, shining from the depth of a boiling volcano, that give birth to the ashes. Hear me, I speak of a memory of once a dancing flame. So I'm going to read it in Farsi too, only because this was translated from Farsi to English. And I'm sorry for those who don't speak Farsi. مرا بشنو سخنی میگویم من از تبار شقایق‌های وحشی که کلامشان خونین است سخنی میگویم من از تبار بیابان‌های خشک من از تشنگی من از سراب یک واحه سخن میگویم با تو من از رود من از ماهی پنهان شده در فلس با تو سخن میگویم من از قله پر از برف من از سالیان دراز ایستادن من از پرنده از حسرت پرواز سخنی میگویم که در آن نه کلام است و نه حجم و دیگر هیچ نیست و همه چیز است همچون شقایق که خون است و ماهی که فلس است همچون خورشید که تابش است سخنی از درون ملتهب یک کوه داغ که گدازه هایش خاکستر خواهد آفرید و من از خاکستر که یادگار رقص شعله است سخن میگویم. Should I continue reading? Okay. This one is called the City of War. I was born in the city of war, in the days of hate. If you want to find me, come to my little house that is built on nothing. Come at the loneliness o'clock. In my dried garden, only scarecrows smile. In my city, kids play with wooden guns and grown-ups with real tanks. Here in this city, only ashes are alive, and nobody brings news from the flames of love. It all ends by carving the names on the black stones, and again begins with the sounds of another explosion. Alas, I was born in the city of war, in the days of hate, in the season of dried crimson meadows. And here's the Farsi version. شهر جنگ. من در شهر جنگ متولد شدم. در تاریخ نفرت. آنجا که کوچه باغ‌ها سرابند و تنها سنگلاخ‌های مردگان راه عبور. اگر به دنبالم می‌گردی بیا به خانه کوچکم که روی هیچ ساخته شده سر ساعت انزوا. در باغچه خشک من فقط مترسک‌ها لبخند می‌زنند. در شهر من کودکان با تفنگ‌های چوبی بازی می‌کنند و بزرگسالان با تانک‌های آهنی. در شهر من فقط خاکستر زنده است و هیچ خبری از شعله عشق نیست. قصه ها با حکاکی نام ها در سنگ های سیاه ختم می شوند و دوباره با صدای انفجار دیگر آغاز می شوند. آه، من در شهر جنگ به دنیا آمدم، در تاریخ نفرت، در فصل خشک سالی دشت های خونین. I'm going to skip a couple of them. I can read them, but just skipping to the ones that I've... I'm going to read the exile. just for you. Just for
I'm
you.
reading your poems.
Just for you. Okay. So this one is exile. There was no return in the sparrow's decamp. There was no path left to return, not even the thought of it. Behind the trellis in the garden, a little red tulip bloomed. The gardener never saw it, and she was given to the hands of forgotten. She dreamt of rain, and the howling of the wind brought the news of nothing. And no gardener ever looked behind the trellis. And the little red tulip was given to the winds of forgotten, and the little sparrow took her memory to the forgotten city. This is all what we'll put here. This actually is one of the pieces here, which I'm going to read it in Farsi too, that my dad, I have a notebook that is falling apart. I've been writing on it for decades. And my dad, this is his handwriting that said, this is a true poetry and you need to publish it, but it's been sitting there for a couple of decades. کوچ. در کوچه آن پرستوک راهی دگر نمانده بود و نه اندیشیدن به بازگشت. در پشت آلاچیق عقاقیا گلی رویده که به فراموشی سپرده شده. باغبان که هر روز به باغچه آب میداد گل را ندید و عقاقیا به باران میاندیشید. در وحشت باد صدایی بود که خبر از هیچ میداد و هیچ باغبانی به پشت آلاچیق نگاه نکرد و عقاقیا در دست باد فراموش شد و پرستویی که کوچ میکرد یاد او را به شهر فراموشی برد. I wrote this in a bus in 1985 going to Turkey. And I knew that that would be the last time back then that I would be in Iran. And I haven't returned since. But that's when I wrote this. It's a lot longer in Farsi version, but I just decided to shorten it. There was one more that I think I have it in Farsi, maybe I don't. Yeah. So this one, I wrote.
I like the Mother's Lamb one.
I will read that. I wanted to read the. I will read that.
Not to interrupt.
That's fine. No. That's fine. I will read that. That's very recent. I'm trying to find that. Where is it? Maybe I should go back. Okay, that page. It's actually right here. This was after going to so many funerals and hearing about friends that died or disappeared. And it's called The Ones That Won't Be Back. Sounds come with the burning winds in these thirsty fields. The fire inside earth's womb fears the birth of ashes. This is a season of endings. The seeds trundled and collapsed, and the flowers got lost in a dream. The wind took the news of flowers that begin at the end. No blooms, not here in this season of ends. The dust spreads its bed. I saw eternity when those who seek a calm and patient embrace cuddled with the dust deep under. Beyond the far twinkles of time, the dew never washed death away. I see faces in frames dressing the tombstones. The spoiled smiles behind the haze of time stare at nothing. The tears won't wash the dust of death. Still the burning winds bring the news of the flowers blooming under the dust when times end and times begin. And this is the Farsi version, so this would be the last Farsi piece here. برای آنها که رفتند. در دشتی خشک صدای یادها همراه با بادهای سوزان می آیند و در آتشی در دل زمین به تولد خاکستر می اندیشید. در فصلی که دیگر هیچ نماند، تپش از اوج به پایین غلتید و گلی در خواب گم شد و باد از گلهای خبر داد که در انتها رویدند و شکفتنشان در هرگز بود. خاک بستر می گوشود و من ابدیت را دیدم و آنها که در پیش در جستجوی آغوشی آرام و صبور به دل خاک رفتند و شبنم هرگز مرگ را نشست. و من پس از لحظه های دور به لبخندی می اندیشم که در غبار زمان ماسیده است. در غبار زمان ماسیده. و به قاب عکسی می اندیشم که بر فراز تکه سنگی سیاه می نگرد به هیچ. و دیگر هیچ اشکی غبار مرگ را پس از لحظه های ما نخواهد شست. و من هنوز صدای باران را می شنوم که از گلی خبر می دهد که در انتها رویده. So which one did you want? The mother's lamb? The mother?
up to you.
No, you tell me, please. No, please tell
I
me.
like the mother's lamb.
Sure. Okay, so this is very, very new. It was during the Women Life Freedom movement. I mean, the movement's still going on, but during the, the turmoil. And I was watching all these videos, and what got me was the scream of the mother that heard about her son being hung, or the screams of the children the mothers that would hear the news that their children were hung or killed or disappeared. And there was this anger that I was feeling, and at the same time, hopelessness, and well, not hopelessness, I take it back, this helplessness. You're watching this video and you're hearing these mothers scream like that. Mother's lamb. Be ready, Ahrimans, for the caller of Mother Persia, with each anguished sigh, will hunt down the hooves that roped her lambs. For the mother's curse will sentence your soulless necks, for the wail of mothers bereaved will chain you in eternal dungeons, and the mother's endless pained tears will flood your existence into the hollows of the underworld. Be ready, offsprings of Moloch. The fire of mother's grieving heart will sentence you into eternal infernos. Those ropes you knot on the necks of this land's lambs will loop your frozen hearts to breathlessness. With every mother's alas in timeless echo chambers, be ready, hellish headsman. And this is also recent, basically dedicated to the Women Life Freedom movement. Dancing Hair. The river of blood runs through the veins of this land, the strings of my sister's hair flying on the trees, painting the frames of freedom's breeze, braiding the basket of dreams, roaring the sounds of freedom, wounded wombs giving birth to mighty daughters, the world falling at their screams, heads bowing down to their fears, crimson songs singing of courage infinite, we do not end. We will rise like our mother's love everlasting. Rainbow flags braided with our hair, soaring the winds of freedom, burning fires from the beginning of times, birthing phoenixes, never dying, never lost, rise and rise, just like our mother's love. Okay, should I keep going?
Sure.
Do you have questions? Oh, okay. All right, okay. I think I want to read, sorry, I'm going to look for it. This is for my daughter. Daughter child. I think I wrote this around 1970. She was about 4. I heard your heartbeat. Did you hear mine? Your mere existence blessing my soul. Do I deserve you? Did I have your consent to bring you to the jungle? There is a land far away, not in fairy tales. We have no land. No one ever did. What bliss in landlessness. Our eyes gazed deep as an endless night. I have seen your eyes 1,000 years. The joy you bring, a sublime being, is of divine. We have been here before. Do you remember me? The ancestors called you from the land of lionesses, land of cypress trees spearing the skies, land of golden songs and poets, land of women never silenced. What divine joy, what sublime being, what nirvana, daughter, child, the ancestors are calling.
Now we're all in tears.
I thought we could ask a few questions. Is that okay?
Should I read one more?
Oh, yes. Please. Please do.
Okay, well, I made everyone cry, so
Yeah, now you've done
sorry. All right, so I think it was around, this is kind of, that's what I'm saying, things are very intimate. But this is for my husband.
Oh, nice. Who would that be?
And this is before we met. I mean, yeah, I think so, yeah. Manifest. Come, find me when the night spreads in its dark enigma. In the bed of your hands, solve the riddles of my body. Come, drown in the sea of my blushed glance. There stay forever. Come, let your fingers dance in the layers of my black hair. Unfold my troubled heart, stay everlasting. Come, I'm calling you, you. The light of existence twinkles in the mirror of your eyes. Find me when the enigma of the night falls. I will sing the tale of the silent lagoon to you. There's no voice now, only a song to mourn this silence. But when you come, and night blankets us with its caress, I will make all our being the essence of divine of love divine. Come find me and manifest. All right, now I can.
Come on.
Okay, I can now just stop maybe.
So I was thinking, I don't know if this mic is on, or if I need it or not.
I don't think so.
So you're a professor of clinical psychology,
Yeah.
right? And how did you come to join that with writing poetry? Because I know your parents were poets, right? And so it's an interesting idea that you're in one discipline, as we all are, and then you're in another discipline as well. And so,
Yeah. So when I started writing, I was not a clinical psychologist. I was very young, and I think I always dreamed of being a writer, more than anything else. I was good in writing. I won essay contests all the time. Dad was so encouraging. But as I told you at the beginning, there was a therapeutic aspect in writing for me, always. And in this field of psychology, we have poetry therapy, for trauma and for other issues. But once I got my training and education in clinical psychology, obviously it's very well known that writing and journaling is actually one of the techniques we give people, because bringing your thoughts on the paper takes the heaviness of thoughts away. You read them, you hear your voice, you hear your thoughts, you see your thoughts, and it's very therapeutic. So while I was not a clinical psychologist when I started writing, and back then I could feel the healing powers that it has, but now as a clinical psychologist, I believe in it even more. And I always tell when I teach my students about the treatment modalities and techniques, I definitely talk about journaling, writing about thoughts, the connections between thoughts, emotions, and behavior, and also encourage them to do it themselves. And if I could take a survey, it would be probably 90% of them coming back and saying how writing has helped them help themselves. So there's definitely a correlation between writing, poetry, or anything, and the psychology of human beings.
Gail, do you want to weigh in on this?
Oh, I don't know anything about clinical psychology, but I do know that writing is used in therapy because it's like, okay, you can't maybe organize your life in here, but you could organize it on a page and turn it into a shapely thing like a poem and make some sense out of it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and if you're going through such, dark times, and you're almost, it's a taboo to talk about it. It's a taboo to say, I don't feel good, I feel anxious, I feel depressed. You can't talk about it in society, and the society is not giving you resources either. Writing it's a freedom, it's a sense of freedom. That's why I write. I mean, sometimes I'm angry when I'm writing, sometimes I'm really sad, sometimes I feel romantic, sometimes I feel, hopeful, but it's yours, and it's yours, it's very intimate, and you're allowing yourself to have that freedom of expression that you do not have in your society. That maybe, I'm not just talking about Iran society, but any society, the stigma of saying I'm depressed, the stigma of saying I'm anxious, when in fact, in our field, we are talking more and more about normalization of depression and anxiety and other issues. Raise your hand if you've never been anxious or ever been depressed, So, there's definitely
we
a healing
work at
power.
universities, we're always
True. I know that. So, I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Cornel, do you want to chime in?
I think we could probably open it up to all of these wonderful voices, but let me just say one thing that I was wondering, though, my beloved, that when you think of the Russians in the novel, or black people in the 20th century in music, or Irish playwrights from Oscar Wilde and Bernard Shaw, or our Jewish brothers and sisters in musical theater, culminating with Sondheim, what is it about the Persians that they produce such magnificent poetry, generation after generation?
Are you asking me?
That's a question. That's a question.
That's so true. And when you said that she comes out of a tradition of Rumi and Hafez, and it's there.
Something is going
There's
on
something
there.
going on
Yeah.
in the blood, in the
The
DNA.
culture, in
There's
the formation, socialization,
there's poetry.
priority of what is important and significant, not just money, 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 but love of playfulness and language as it's poetically expressed. So when you were growing up with your magnificent mother and father, and even with the Antigone and Tusa.
Is there something
Oh,
about
what
Farsi
is it
that,
about?
because the language itself, does it lend itself to poetry?
Well,
Because, English is this huge language, right? It's the biggest language in the world. And does Farsi lend itself to poetry?
well, yes. I mean, I'm going to try to answer this the best way that I can. Obviously, growing up with a father that is a poet in, the biggest and the most prized possessions of him was his books and writings. We were exposed to poetry and books from early age, and we were reading, and he would read to us. I spent a lot of times in his library, and we talked a lot about poetry. I read a lot of those Russian novels, everything in Farsi. That's one of the things of also the loss of this vast library that you've read growing up. And I remember when Nirvana would ask me, "Mom, have you read this book?" I had to ask her, go on Google, see if there was a version of it in Farsi, and I go, "Oh yeah, I read this book," But so that is very helpful to be exposed to literature and poetry. But I think the value that Iranians give to literature and poetry and poets have always been something that encouraged, this field of poetry. We looked at poets almost like prophets, and they were put in such high places as well. People get together and read poetry at so many traditional events that we have. And the golden ages it's called the golden ages of Islam, was the birth of many, many of our poets. And I sometimes feel that that's by itself it was a resistance, because the language was forbidden for a long time. But then, there was a mass production of poetry. But the country is really, you hear and you see the videos of, war and destruction and turmoil and oppression. But Iranians have always found a way of song and dance and poetry and finding healing in those, fields. So I think it's just a historical aspect of Iran. And
So I wanted to ask you, because Gail, and perhaps you, but certainly me, we've done a lot of translations. And what does it mean to translate the Farsi into English? What do you lose? What do you take? Because it's a very complicated problem.
very. There are some words that you cannot translate.
Right.
There's just no way you can,
Yeah.
because it's so embedded in culture of understanding, not just language. Because language is one thing, and understanding what this word is attached to culturally is another thing. So there are things that you can, and that's why some of my translations of Farsi pieces are shorter. And then you also lose history, because everything that I wrote has something in the background. There's the city of war. I mean, those who lived during war. I have two of my neighbors here. We had, our houses were next to each other. the sirens and go to the shelters and, all of that. And so when you write about city of war, it's actually applicable to a lot of places now, Syria, Yemen, Palestine, the Ukraine. But there's a history behind it. So you lose some cultural significance, you lose some history, and you cannot transfer some of the words that are so cultural. But that's why, you see translations of Farrokhzad, and someone that I'm deeply influenced by, reading her poetries from very young age. And I read different translations, even though you see obviously a huge percentage similarities in translations, but there are differences between translations, and you think to yourself, what was that translator thinking about? Or one of the best translations we saw was the brother that wrote the biography of the lonely woman,
right,
Michael. Somebody, yeah. So yeah, it's not an easy thing to translate poetry to another language.
No, I mean, I'm a medieval and Renaissance scholar, and I teach Dante all the time. I can't read medieval Italian, and it's a complicated thing to teach it because you think, what am I missing?
Absolutely.
What am I missing?
Absolutely.
And you are missing something.
Oh my God. I mean, one could argue that two of the greatest intellectual explosions in the history of modern Europe was Wieland's translation of Shakespeare into German,
Yep.
and Constant Garnett's translation of 13 Russian novelists into English. I mean, Virginia Woolf said, "It's a new world now." I didn't know Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and Chekhov were out there. I was reading Arnold Bennett. So, it's a whole new world out there. And so when you think of the translations having this kind of impact, and then, with Annahita translating herself, see, that's very important. Beckett used to translate himself, right in French, and then
French.
write things waiting for Godot and so forth. You see,
But also many translators, so for example, you're talking about Chekhov. If, when I read the Three Sisters in English, the one that I read in Farsi has some of a touch of Iranian culture. So the translator tries to make it familiar, sound like, you're writing about somebody next door. You're reading about somebody next door. So that's an art for someone that is translating from a different culture, a short story or a novel, to have a touch of culture. That's very helpful to understand the book. But then you read the English version and you think to yourself, I wonder what is the Russian version? What is the original version?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Russian is one of the most difficult languages to learn. I mean, it just is. I mean, Greek and Latin are easier than Russian. So it's an interesting problem of, not having the right words, and how the words work. Because you did a lot of classics, didn't you? Yeah. And
I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Yiddish writers used to say that Chekhov must have written first in Yiddish and translated into Russian, because the level of the tragicomic darkness spoke so deeply to those precious Jewish brothers and sisters with no land, no territory, and holding on to language for dear life. And here's Chekhov saying, "No, I'm really from Taganrog, Russia." So that sense of speaking so deeply to one another people's condition. But I think Rumi has done that. I think that, that Ralph Waldo Emerson said his favorite poet was Sadi
Yeah.
and Haifa. He said, "Hey, I thought you were from New England." I'm from Concord, Massachusetts, but these Persians speak to me at a level that I don't understand, but I cannot deny.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Do you want to end with one poem?
I think maybe two.
Yay.
So this is called Home, and then I will read the one that's called Land, and then, yeah. We
Then we
can
go eat some food.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It smells good too. Home. Here in this nostalgic loneliness, the memories of a familiar gaze do not fit in any eyes. Only the gleams of rendezvous still burn in my heart. In these cobblestone streets, my steps get lost. My words are none. In the corner of this ancient room, my home is lost. My gaze is sewn to the cracked window. The scent of the sea is foreign like me. In lands unfamiliar, in my wistfulness I seek. My eyes filled with waiting. My hands thirst in holding, yearning for the scent of Caspian. I fly to the other side of time. Destiny brings me back. Where the words are silent and the sounds are lost, here I have everything and nothing as I learn how to answer the everlasting question, where am I from? And that is, that is actually, when people call me, where are you from? I literally have to pause and think, Irvine, Los Angeles, New York, Turkey, Sweden, what do they mean? Where am I from? So I have to ask them, what do you mean? Where I was born? Where I'm from? So it's really complicated, being misplaced. It is something that never leaves you. And this, I will end with this. This is very recent. We were going to Hawaii, and Cornel had lecture in University of Hawaii. And I haven't, ever since I left Iran, when I walk, I don't feel belong to the land. I mean, I don't think that necessarily land, should belong to me or I belong to land, but I hope I can make sense of what I'm saying. When we started walking in Hawaii, something happened, and I don't know if it was the indigenous land and then the hospitality of the indigenous people, or their culture, the things that we read about it. We read the book of that wonderful sister, and it was a professor also in that university. And so I just wrote this, and I will end reading by this one. This is very recent. Land. These bloody boots with bloody claws, grabbing, penetrating the lands, pulling up the land skirts, biting its lushness, suffocating its air, murdering ancestor, prostituting culture, burning homes, bringing houselessness, erasing manuscripts, elating marionette rulers, obtruding white language, diminishing legend sagas, writing horrors, palms still dancing with breeze, waves still playing songs, air still healing the souls, family still rooting in land, and bloody claws still grabbing. Thank you so much.
Beautiful reading.
Thank you.
Beautiful reading.
Thank you.
So Annahita's book is going to be on sale. Someone's in charge of this.
Thank
I don't know who it is.
Really?
And she'll sign copies.
Oh, okay.
Is that
Ooh,
okay?
yeah.
But we have snacks, and we have a bar open, and
There's food
come hang
too.
out and come meet Cornel and Annahita.
I'm sure everybody wants to be good. It's okay with me. It's
Everybody
okay.
already knows him.
Yes. Oh,
It's part of the family now.
I think Alec
Sorry, I
has.
just have a question. I was wondering if you could talk about why you named it Dusty Relics.
Oh, that's a good question.
Ooh, wonderful question, Brother
Yeah.
Alec himself.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex.
Oh, why it's called
Why-
Dusty Relics? Why?
So in Farsi, آثار قبارآلود because actually, I was thinking about the word zir khaki, because zir khaki means something that is buried under the dust, and I just thought maybe not that appropriate, but because I mean, my writings are full of dust, literally. It's been there forever, and I have to tell you, and when I was talking to you about this, honey, he said that most poets, that's how they are, and things come to me. I can be in the car driving, and I have this thing, and before I pull over and I have like a piece already, and so I was really focusing on the title, and finally you were sitting there. I said, "Oh, I got it, Dusty Relics."
Well, and I also
So I'm sorry if I don't have a concrete answer. But if anybody else has questions, I would love to answer.
But I think the word relic is really important because, we're in this Catholic university and I teach medieval literature and blah, blah, blah. But this idea of relics as being like a talisman, as something that you hold on to, and that is, whether it's a T-shirt or if it's a piece of the cross or if it's whatever it is, that it's something that means something extraneous.
Absolutely.
To, what life is in some ways. I mean, that somehow it's spiritual
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of writers maybe have the opportunity to keep writing and publishing and writing and publishing, but my life, becoming a refugee at young age and having this journey of in exile and documentation not being documented for years and green card and this and that was just all me trying to survive and find a place in a country and a citizenship and all that. So the last thing I was thinking was publishing, but I still was writing. When I put Nirvana to sleep and it's 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, she's 4 or 5, I would come and write. And, so every time I had a chance, I would write, yes.
Yeah. This is very interesting. You had Dusty Relic first, or it was a translation? Which one you translated? Because it's a beautiful translation, the Farsi.
Thank you.
But which one you had it in your mind?
I had it into my mind, Zira Khaki. But then,
so it was Farsi in your mind.
In my mind was Zir Khaki, and I was thinking, how do I do that it's not under the dust or antiques? Because Zir Khaki can be translated as, and then it just came to me, Dusty Relic. Thank you.
I knew you were a good poet, but I didn't know that good.
Mr. Kambiz is my father's dear friend.
And
you being
father poetry.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful.
And you being here, means a lot. Thank you.
You mentioned you took inspiration from your father. Can you just briefly characterize his poetry and what moved you in particular about how he approached that?
I think, his poetry is just amazing. He was the student of Nima Yushij, and he reading his poetry always, and we talked about it. I would ask him, what does this mean? But I think what inspired me was the encouraging attitude that he had towards me. I told him once that I think you saved me in my childhood. That's what I told him once. He was very positive, very encouraging, very supportive. He always had time. If I go there and say, Dad, I wrote something, and he would never say, I'm busy now. He would say, yeah, let's read it, So I think that was, and then, if you read my, it's in Farsi, but the feedback that he gave me in Farsi and, writing and telling me you're a true poet, you should publish, you're this and that. For a long time, to be honest with you, I thought, well, it's my father. Every father says that. But then, Cornel was encouraging again, and Theresia, and she, to the point that once we were in our neighbor's house, Mariam and Nargis are here, and they were talking about poetry with Mariam and Nargis's father, my friends here, and my father said, by the way, my daughter writes poetry, and he called me and said, read this, or do you remember, read this to Mr. Rafiq, God bless his soul. I mean, he was that encouraging and praising, and I think that was something that helped me to, keep writing. And it was so, something that, it's a relic, I'm holding on to it, and never, ever thought about, the whole world might, not the whole world, I mean, it would be published, and some people would read it in the world, yeah.
No, encouragement is everything.
Everything.
It really is.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and Gail taught me a really good lesson, because I'm kind of a hard grader. And she said to me, well, nobody writes a better poem if you give them a C.
That medieval sensibility comes out very hard.
Yeah.
But it's very.
Get your shit together. And it's like, she was like, no, don't do that.
It's very interesting. Many have argued that the greatest figure of pre-modern times was a philosopher named Avicenna, who was of Persian origin, who wrote 50% of his medical texts in verse. Just keep that in mind. Medical text in verse. How Persian can you get?
And he is Ali Abu Sina رو میگه دیگه Abu Sina. And he actually is the man that discovered alcohol, so Iranians always give a salute to him too when they drink. but
Speaking of which, there's lots of food, there's lots of alcohol, and there's books on
I love you,
my
babe. Thank
If
you.
you can't afford a book, we'll give you a free book.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much.